The contradictions of being an artist and a businessman. I've talked about it before, but I'm gonna go more in depth about it. Is that art and business are completely opposed. Like, art comes from sensibility. Art is expression, a form that a living being has to express emotions, ideas, inspiration, and using paint, voice, sounds, dance can express those emotions and those feelings. Business, al contrario, is the art of selling something, the art of investing money most of the time, or goods, in the hopes of generating revenue, wealth, income, capital. And most of the time, the view you have of what it takes to do art and the views you have for what it takes to do business will conflict. And sometimes you'll find the sweet spot, but most times there's a conflict. I'm gonna give you an example, as always. When I did my first album, I did it in a complete artistic way. I went to South America for 1 year. I recorded in a studio in Cayenne, Guyane, not far from the beach. You could hear in the original recordings before mixing. You could hear on my voice tracks. You could hear the waves, the noises, because we were like in a. It was a good studio, but it was rudimentary compared to those big studios. But I was completely there to express myself, express my art, and give it to the world. I was not really interested or having any idea of how you do a CD, how much it costs to do it, etc., etc. All I knew was that I had a studio, I had a computer, I had recorders, I had an engineer, a mixing table, and I was just putting out music for the world. Then one guy came and heard the album and asked me if I wanted to sign on his label, who was affiliated with Sony. And I was like, I just want my music out, and I want my music out all around the world. My goal is to have my music in all the continents. I want to be in Japan, I want to be in Russia, I want to be in Europe, etc., etc. The guy was like, yeah, no problem. You got it. Anyway, went back in Paris, signed my contract, signed a publishing contract with Sony, signed a recording contract with this label, and the album got released in December '98, and it was an explosion. It was like mind-boggling. Like, no Zouk album sold that much, other than the albums from big bands like Kaysha. It was the first time that a young guy came from nowhere, arrived, African, and just revolutionized the Zouk industry. By the way the music sound, by the bold samples I did, by the way I took Zouk far away from how it was, electronized it, etc., etc. We started this whole movement. And actually, we sold a lot of fucking albums. Woo! More than 100,000. So everybody was happy. And actually, I was happy too. And I was making money, I was doing a lot of shows, going to the West Indies every 2 or 3 weeks, and starting to go all around the world. But I'm not gonna say I was lucky. There's a part of talent, a part of luck, a part of being there at the right time. But when it came to doing the second album, so these guys at the label told me, hey, listen, it's 99. Wow, can you do us like an album like this in 3 months if we send you to New York and have you go work there? So me, I was like, yeah, sure. And so they were businessmen. Like, their interest was not my art. Their interest was, how can we make money with this guy's art? Nothing wrong with that. But everybody has their interest, it's normal. My interest was, okay, I'm a hip hop artist. I did this Zouk album for fun. Now I sold a lot of copies. Everybody's making a lot of money. But me, I want to do hip hop. I want to like continue like to do my mixes, but I don't want to do the same album because I'm an artist, and I'm feeling that what interests me is making more music and pushing the music forward. And everything that I did already, I'm not gonna do it again. That's useless. You have the album here if you wanna hear it. Now I'm gonna do something different. And the fans, they love me. So, you know, they're ready to hear what I have to say. Yeah, right. But these guys were like, okay, we sold X, we made hundreds of thousands of francs back then. Let's send this guy in New York 3 months and see what he comes back with. And me, I'm the type of guy that I'm like a sponge. Like, if you put me in the West Indies and I'm recording, I'm gonna have West Indies influence in my music. If you put me in Cayenne, which is in South America, for example, yeah, I'm gonna have this influence from where I live. And back when I did my first album, yeah, I had a Brazilian girlfriend. I was around Brazilians, people from Guyana, a lot of nationality, a lot of influences from Brazil, from the West Indies, from Europe, from Africa. So I had all this in my album. But now I'm doing my second album in New York. So doing it in New York, I'm completely in New York mode, which means that I'm having like Wu-Tang in the studio, Rakim, I'm in the hip hop vibe. So what I do a, Africo, Caribbean-ish, but very hip hop oriented album. And what happens? When the album was released, World War Chico, we didn't sell anything. And we went from amazing success to complete failure. So, as an artist, it was not a failure. As an artist, it was what I wanted to do, which was continue to do my art. But for the people who were investing money on me, they were very upset because all of a sudden, they went from having the power horse to having a donkey. And all of a sudden, they were pissed. And like they didn't want to invest, do a second video, they didn't want to do this, that, and me, as an artist, I was like, you don't believe in me, blah, 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 blah. You know how it is. Like, it's like the confrontation become this. Like, if you believe in me, you're supposed to put this money on me. And the person who's putting their money and losing their money will say, listen, we're not gonna put more money if you're already losing money. That's where the team conflict. And so it was a very bad time for me. I was very depressed. 2-3 years passed, and I went back on the down low. I went to live in Belgium, where I did music for music. I didn't have a lot of money. I was doing a few shows, and but I was there. So it was crazy because the people who bought that album were saying that it's amazing, it's so in advance, etc. But a lot of fans were actually they wanted to hear the first something that was similar to the first album. That's when I discovered that even if fans are faithful, it's only 10% of fans that are faithful. The rest, they're very volatile. And but I learned a lot. Why? I learned that. So one day when I did my third album, I talked to one DJ one day. I was in this club in Paris, and I asked the DJ, why you never play my tracks? And he was like, oh, they're hard to put in the mix. I said, what do you mean? He said, no, your beats are too complicated and it's hard to put them in the mix for us DJs. I was like, okay. Yeah, try to do something. Like, okay, I'll try. So I go, when I'm doing my first album, my third album, I did this track called 88 BPM. And like everything super simple and stuff. Put it out, boom, #1 record. And then I did this track called Kaysha, which is still banging up to now. I did like, what happened when I did my third album was that I really realized that there's a sweet spot about what you want to do as an artist, what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to show the world. And at the same time, because I became independent, I went out of the label, so I was doing the thing with my money. And I have to understand that, yeah, the investment you make, you're trying to get them back too. And I start understanding that there was a difference between what I am as an artist and where I'm trying to go. And sometimes I want to go fast. Sometimes I'm in 2020, but it's 2005. So I had to learn, when I'm thinking 2020 and it's 2005, I learned to give them music for 2007. To be in advance, but not too much. And it gave us tracks like Motema, One Love, On Dit Quoi, which were back in the days bold, but just advanced enough. And I learned to keep some tracks sometimes, to release them in 2 or 3 albums. And not be frustrated by it. I learned to do commercial tracks, and this is as a businessman. I learned to do tracks that will sell. In an album, I learned to put like my first 6-7 tracks, commercial tracks, and then the next 6-7 tracks would be tracks for my own pleasure as an artist, to find the good balance between the two. Yeah, I really learned that when you do art and when you deal with people who are doing business, you have to understand that you will never agree most of the time, because you have usually two different goals. Artists, if they are like deep tormented artists, their goal is just to release their music. If they are egocentric, the goal is to make a lot of money, fuck a lot of girls, and be famous. And businessmen, their goal is to make money. They don't care about anything else. And you know, I'm not blaming anybody. It's normal. And but it's only when I became my own boss that I realized that, okay, you have Kaysha, the artist, who sometimes go far there, and then you have Edward, the owner of the company, who goes completely there. And there's a sweet spot in the middle. In the middle, there's this place where you can at the same time make money and at the same time enjoy what you're doing and have fun. Make art for your own pleasure. And at the same time, pay your rent. And I really realized it because I became independent. And it doesn't mean that you realize it only because you're independent, but a lot of times us artists are we don't realize the money that is spent. We don't realize the investment of other people, and this is why we believe we can just do anything we want. I learned with failure to not think that I was right just because I am the artist. I learned to think art, think business at the right time. And I'm not recording and creating for business. I create what comes. And sometimes I'm gonna be like, oh, lovely song. And I'm not gonna sell anything, but I still love it, so I'm gonna put it up because I don't give a fuck. And sometimes I'm gonna do a thing and I'm gonna be like, oh shit, I'm gonna make a lot of money. And that's great. I love your comments. I love when you subscribe to my channel, so don't hesitate to subscribe and leave a comment. And if you have other questions for me for others episodes of Inspire, please let me know. Ciao, peace.